and local communities will be the backbone of a sustainable society. Sustainability must be incorporated into the curriculum and all vocational courses. To rapidly achieve the transition to a post-carbon economy, we need every person to understand the values that underpin sustainability. This is not the time to slash $63 million from the CSIRO funding. Science is critical to a sustainable future. We cannot drive a revolution on the scale we're talking about, on a scale greater than the IT revolution, for example, without science and energised students. We would abolish HECS. Instead of tax cuts for the rich, we will provide students with a living allowance so that no student is forced to work during term time. Doesn't that make for happier families, healthier students and a better educated population? We will have national discussions about how we can work together to be healthier and happier and share the changes and workloads to achieve these goals in a way that reduces the gap between the rich and the poor, the overemployed and the underemployed. We need to come to a national consensus about how we can have a higher quality of life by redesigning our homes, communities, cities and workplaces and our ways of life to be more sustainable. The future is ours for the making. We embrace the challenge and we look forward to 2020 when we'll look back and say that we were the generation that set Australia on the path to the healthy, happy and authentically sustainable nation that it's become. We were the generation that didn't disappoint our children or steal their future from them. Mr Deputy President, that is the speech Australians would have loved to have heard. It would have drawn a line under the past and made the future hopeful and exciting, not daunting. But instead of such a speech, what we have had can only be described as a tweaking of the parameters of imagination and thinking of the Howard years. Whilst there have been welcome changes to try to reduce the gap between the rich and poor and to alleviate additional costs of childcare and energy, they can only be seen as token against the backdrop of the tax cuts. The increased tax on luxury cars will be offset for the rich many times over by the huge take-home pay hike for the wealthy as they pocket their tax cuts. The 30% private health insurance rebate, costing almost $5 billion a year, has not been touched. A person on $300,000 a year will take home $91 a week more, whilst a person earning $30,000 will take home only $11. One tank of petrol, one visit to the supermarket will absorb that and more for a low-income earner. If the government was serious about a more equitable society, it would have seriously addressed inequity by not proceeding with tax cuts for those earning over $75,000, and the Greens will move to amend the budget accordingly. The current disparity between what the rich get and what low-income earners get is stark, but when you consider by 2011-12 the cost of superannuation tax concessions will exceed the cost of the aged pension. Will exceed the cost of the aged pension. How can any Labor member of this parliament justify that? To suggest that a one-off energy payment will satisfy pensioners' needs is dishonest. The aged pension is inadequate and must be increased. While the one-off payment to carers is welcomed because anything is better than nothing, the government has failed to deal with the long-term well-being of carers. They urgently needed an increase in carer payment and a scheme to address their long-term disadvantage, for example, in superannuation. We cannot say that our society is sustainable if carers' vital work, impacting on their own mental and physical well-being, puts them in the lowest social well-being index. To address gambling or alcohol abuse, we must ensure that taxes are returned to address the problems generated. The $10 billion alcohol abuse problem will not be minimised by filling government coffers with an undirected alco-pop tax, but rather by redirecting that taxation revenue to education, counselling, access to services and by banning advertising. And that is what the Greens will seek to do. Funding for Indigenous people doesn't match the government's rhetoric nor adequately address what needs to be done. $450 million per year is needed for health if we have any hope of closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Yet in this budget, the new spending is only $250 million for all programs, and most of that is misdirected through the government's discriminatory, ill-targeted Northern Territory intervention, spending another $69 million for administration for the failing income quarantining debacle. This is wrong for a nation that is in surplus. Surely now is the time to invest in making it fairer. Whilst certainly not a green budget, this isn't even a traditional Labor budget. It will benefit the already wealthy without addressing the underlying causes of increased costs of food, petrol and energy, which hurt everyone, but which disproportionately hurt those who are already struggling. So what are the 5 headlines of a green budget needed to deliver a sustainable Australia? How did they fare under the Rudd budget? Instead of hearing a vision that all of Australia's electricity will come from renewables by 2020, we heard a deathly silence on commercialisation or rollout of renewable energy technologies. The Greens say, can we do this by 2020? And we say, yes, we can. Ask yourself if in 1995, only 13 years ago, you would have thought it possible to have the world wired for instant global communication, or that our lives would revolve around instant messaging received by telephones in our pockets. But a renewably powered Australia by 2020 won't happen by paying lip service to renewable energy technologies and giving $500 million plus to support a coal technology that does not exist and has no prospect of delivering any significant emission reductions by 2020. What should have happened is, as the Greens have advocated, a bold emission reduction target for 2020, the establishment of a Sun Fund of $3 billion over 10 years to drive research, development and commercialisation, as well as the introduction of a feed-in tariff to support these technologies that are ready to go but not as cheap as wind, and a bill such as the one I introduced today is what is needed. The 20% mandatory renewable energy target is a good start, but should have been at least 25%. It currently is most effective for wind energy, but has to be supplemented by a feed-in tariff for the technologies that are market-ready but not yet the least-cost technology. The fact that the government doesn't understand renewable energy or the realities of large-scale rollout of the technologies or barriers to market readiness is no better demonstrated than by their rush within 24 hours of the budget to try to fix the mess they've made by giving everything to clean coal in 2008-2009, and now by flagging they'll patch the gap by shifting $40 million from the Energy Innovation Fund previously committed to solar energy storage and hydrogen technologies and redirecting it to assist geothermal energy companies with ongoing drilling costs. Why is the government trying to divide and rule the renewable sector by taking from solar to give to geothermal when it should have taken the funds from the coal industry's pipe dream? Has the government decided to destroy the solar sector? Any preliminary analysis or even a conversation with the industry would have revealed that means testing rooftop photovoltaics would lead to a complete collapse, and so it is already happening. Within 24 hours of Minister Garrett's myopia, solar communities are already calling my office, reporting potential customers, indicating that they won't be proceeding with photovoltaics. There is serious speculation of industry-wide collapse, taking down the government's Solar Cities program on the way out. This is amateur hour for the government, and they'll have to reverse it. Did the government even consult with the renewable energy sector, or were Ministers Garrett, Ferguson and Wong too busy meeting with the coal companies to make time? Another Green headline, maximising energy efficiency across the country, from huge industrial complexes to offices and every home by 2020. Yes, it's a big idea. It's a climate winner, an expansive jobs and manufacturing industry driver, and it's achievable. The Greens have put forward a series of policies that would give us efficient investment, drive systematic change of this kind across Australia. The first, Energy Efficiency Access and Saving Initiative, would retrofit all of Australia's 7.4 million homes over the course of a decade, rolling out home energy audits, providing the service and paying the upfront costs, which would be recouped through savings on energy bills. EASY would require an upfront investment from the government that, at its peak, would reach $22 billion, but it would more than repay itself, not only through direct repayments, but also through deferred investment in new power stations and electricity grid infrastructure, reduced emissions and greater household amenity. We have